and welcome to Voices Unhindered. I'm Crystal Jenkinson. On this show, I give a unique perspective and listening ear to voices that often go unheard. I want everyone to know that you are not alone and that your voice and story matters. This week on Voices Unhindered, acupuncturist Tracey Shewan joins me as she shares about how losing her father to cancer led her on a spiritual journey where she eventually experienced what she says was a Kundalini awakening. Hi Tracey, I wanted to ask about your childhood. How did it shape you into someone that struggled to express themselves?
Unconsciously, for my childhood, I was really on eggshells. My father carrying his own trauma, and as a result of that is not being able to have tools to process that. It came out in anger. So in spite of the fact that my mother was a very kind, supportive and consistent parent, my dad had his own struggles that just came out in his behaviour towards the rest of the family. I think whatever environment we grow up in, it's all we know, so it's sort of normal in a way. And it wasn't until much later, until I got into adulthood and began to have some really difficult experiences with my own mental health and emotional life and the sorts of relationships that I was kind of
attracting.
Exactly.
Yeah. And how did you realize that that was like rooted in like some trauma and the things that you were attracting? Like how did you realize it was?
Things got pretty bad. I think they have to sometimes for us to start looking at what we're doing and questioning and kind of seeking a different way. Towards my later 20s, I had come out of a really destructive relationship that I'd been in for a couple of years, and I was emotionally a wreck. I didn't know how to deal with that, and I thought that the conditioning that I had taught me that I needed to be strong and not show that I was suffering in any way. So I was desperately trying to keep up this front of functioning in life while really struggling emotionally. And it led me down some dark paths of a lot of alcohol and drug use.
And was that something you grew up with your dad?
Yeah.
Alcohol.
Not the drugs, but alcohol for sure. But in spite of all these kind of strategies that I'd had to suppress this emotional stuff that wasn't processed, it was just coming up anyway, and those strategies weren't really working.
Like counselling and stuff, like you'd been through that and it didn't kind of work?
I had only been at that point to one counselling session, which was terrible. It put me off. So I wasn't necessarily looking for that immediately, but I knew I needed to shift some things in my life, or I really felt like this is not going to end well. Like it was a deep feeling of doom is coming if I don't make some changes. So it really just started in some small ways of stopping the partying, starting to exercise, starting to eat healthy, looking at finding some meaning in the work I was doing. Starting to shift in that way. And then the therapy came later, kind of almost incidentally at the right time.
And how did you find that you wanted to, like, how did you find meaning and what led you to look for that?
I'd spent a lot of my 20s travelling, exploring, having adventure, trying to avoid any sort of serious responsibility. But the jobs that I'd had until my later 20s had been just admin sort of work, and I hadn't found it particularly fulfilling. And I really felt this deep call that I want to do something that is helpful, that aligns with my values and aligns with my nature, in the sense of I'm pretty introverted. I really like to support people in a one-on-one setting. And so I started to look at options for what I could do that was going to feel like it just had more meaning to it.
And then, so what led you into studying acupuncture and reiki?
So the acupuncture, at the time when I was kind of going through this bit of an existential crisis around what was the meaning of life, what am I doing, what are all these feelings that are coming up, I was looking at what courses were on offer in Christchurch for holistic health. Also at that same time, my father was actually really unwell. He was going through cancer treatment, so he was in and out of hospital in various states of kind of discomfort and pain. I found that I really felt drawn to doing some massage on him, and it seemed to really help and soothe him. So I felt I really feel a call to some sort of holistic health training. And at that time, there was an acupuncture school here in Christchurch. It's not here any longer. But I didn't know anything about Chinese medicine, but I felt there's some mystique around it. I felt really drawn to finding out more about it. So I just kind of followed that intuitively.
Like curiosity?
And I went along and learned a little bit about that, and everything that was spoken about in this short course that I went to around a very holistic approach to health, around a connection to nature, a connection to all of life, just spoke really deeply to me.
What drew you? Was it more than just like what you kind of knew about acupuncture? Was it kind of like something deeper? Yeah.
It was a doing, and I can't really explain it. It was just a deep knowing, this is right, this is what I need to do. Yeah, it wasn't really logical. I didn't know where that was going to lead. I just kept following that deeper feeling.
And your dad not being well, it happened before you started studying, right? And how did that affect like your relationship near the end? Like you didn't obviously have the greatest relationship growing up. Did you feel like you kind of healed a bit near the end?
Well, to some extent. It's funny, because when you grow up in a situation like that, there's still a deep love and there's dysfunction, and they kind of coexist.
Yeah.
So I, to some extent at that point, knew that he loved all of us and was doing the best that he could, and yet a lot of the behaviour was just really unacceptable. But there was a softening in him towards the end. Once he got sick, the alcohol fell away because he couldn't drink.
Yeah.
And I think his own probably inner facing of his mortality just softened the edges. It was a lot easier to be with him at that point.
It's so funny how you say that, because like I feel like when my dad, like he's had a stroke and things, and he's been, into drinking and smoking, and when he had these like health issues, I feel like it's softened him a lot. It's weird how it does that. Like, and I don't wish any I didn't wish any of those things on him, but it definitely has made, I think it makes you realize how frail life is and how short life can be. And do you mind me asking, what kind of meditation readings and spiritual teachings did you pursue, just like to fill the void of like pain?
It sort of started when, partway through my acupuncture training, I encountered some experiences in the student clinic where the people were in a lot of distress, and I felt ill-equipped to respond to that other than just to kind of listen and be a supportive ear. But I really felt like I need some counselling skills to work in this way, because I know this is going to be something that will come up from time to time, and I want to feel like I can support as well as possible. So my clinic partner, like my acupuncture student clinic partner at the time, I spoke with him about this, and he was doing this therapy training. It was called intuitive therapy at the time. It's since changed its name to Pasha therapy. But he told me a little bit about that, and again I just had that deep feeling of, this sounds really right, really resonates. So I began that training, and throughout the course of that training to actually become a Pasha therapist, we had our own therapy alongside. All the students had their own therapy alongside, and it was that therapy then that I really discovered very quickly, actually there's a lot of my own stuff here that really needs some healing, understanding and some resolution. So that was the beginning, and that particular form of therapy was very kind of spiritually oriented, and that it was Pasha therapy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is that related to somatic therapy?
That it's very much about feeling the sensations and emotions in the body rather than changing cognitive processes.
Yeah, like not pushing them away, kind of the trauma.
Really, because it very much, in my experience at least, is stored in our energy.
That's true.
So it was about getting in touch with that, firstly, in a supported environment. I think so often we're just so scared to feel.
Yeah, definitely. And even trauma can make you block out memories.
Completely.
And you don't even remember till like years later, I've heard. Especially if you're quite young.
A coping strategy, like a survival technique, really. I became really aware of there's a lot of stuff here that I really need to work through, and I started to really delve into that and gain some insight around the behaviour patterns that I'd set up just to cope, the reasons why I was attracting these not so great relationships into my life, and to get clear on what I was below all of that trauma, below all of that, like the essential, the soul. Or
with the relationships, do you mind me asking, like, when you say you had bad relationships, do you mean like you kept attracting like similar types of people again and again? Is that kind of what you mean?
It's such a common thing. I think when you have a parent like my father who was emotionally unavailable, I just unconsciously was looking for that and repeating.
I relate to that, yeah. And I mean, and alcoholism does that. Like they're there, but they're not really there, and you need someone to, especially if my dad was a solo dad, you need someone to speak to. And like when they come home after work and they're just drinking, it's like you're speaking to a brick wall. That's what I felt like. You don't want to speak to them drunk. You want to speak to them when they're not drunk, right? And if you don't have that, you're like looking for it somewhere else, right?
It's a norm rather than stable.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And did you realise that, like, as you went on, kind of, that's where it came from?
Did once I started engaging in this therapy, I was like,
Wow.
that makes sense. Like, it shone a light on a lot of stuff that I'd kind of been doing and attracting, and awareness really is the first step towards changing things. So it was really really impactful, and it really started to shift my life in a direction for the much better.
Is it kind of like self-reflection, kind of, or a bit more than that? Like,
a bit more like that. That's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
A little bit more, and that it's really about sitting with discomfort, getting really still, bringing awareness into the body and out of thinking, the thinking mind, and really feeling what is there, and then really asking of those feelings, like, what is this about? What am I needing? What am I believing here? Because there's often like really kind of unconscious beliefs that we've taken on about ourselves and our self-worth and all of that sort of stuff that kind of underlies.
And those things can be quite deeply rooted as well.
Yeah, and I feel throughout the human journey, like, nobody comes in here and gets through life completely unscathed, but there's certainly a vast spectrum of degrees of trauma that people can experience, and that early trauma where you're really internalizing a lot of the messaging that you're getting certainly takes deep root.
Yeah, definitely. When you're younger, I feel like it has a greater impact. Yeah. The younger, the more greater, I feel like.
Yes.
It's just my experience. Do you mind me asking about the Kundalini awakening? Is that how you say it?
That's right.
Yeah. I don't say that word much. I've heard about Kundalini yoga, and I've heard a bit about, like, the different opinions, like different beliefs. And I was wondering, did you kind of do you pray for this to happen, or did you know this was it, and how did you know that was what it was, if that makes sense?
So I'll go back a little bit, because at the end of that therapy, I got to a point where I felt better than I had ever could remember. Like, I really felt like I understand how to work with my feelings. I'm holding a lot less judgment around what I'm feeling. I'm feeling a lot more open and connected with life and with the people I'm meeting, a lot more kind of in my body and able to be here and comfortable. But I felt as well like there was a moment of recognition. We can lead a good life, we can have good work, we can have a great relationship, we can have good friends, we can have all the kind of boxes checked. But again, in me, there was this deep feeling of, but there's something more, like, it's not enough. Like, to have everything looking good and feeling good in terms of our circumstances, it was like this deep yearning of just, there's something else here that it's possible to discover. And so that really started me down a track of seeking out spiritual teachings, of reading a lot of spiritual books, of really, I mentioned to you, just obsessively meditating and watching things online, and just had this deep yearning that couldn't be satisfied, I knew, by anything worldly. So that went on for several years, alongside just living an ordinary life, going to work and having children and all the rest of it. So it was like my spare time was just focused on this really deep inquiry and spiritual searching. So I knew what a Kundalini awakening was. I wasn't praying for that specifically, but I was praying very much for some kind of revelation, for some kind of opening, something more. I just can't, it's hard to put words to it.
You're desperate, kind of. Is that the word?
Desperate doesn't quite fit. It was just this deep yearning and knowing that there's just more to experience in this life. There's more to know about ourselves and our true nature. And so I kind of gave up everything. I gave up partying, I gave up pleasures. I was living this very sort of ascetic lifestyle of just my spare time, drinking tea, meditating, reading. And then at a certain point, about 10 years ago, I was listening to a spiritual teaching in my car, and I just pulled over, and I just, for whatever reason, in this moment was just overtaken with this deep prayer of just, please, I don't know what else to do. It felt like a deep surrender, just whatever life, whatever you can show me, just please, I surrender to that. And at that moment, this energy started just surging through my body like nothing I've ever experienced before. Again, it's just so hard to put words to this sort of thing, but because of all the reading and exposure I'd had to spiritual teachings, I knew what it was, so I had a framework. And since then, from reading other people's experiences with that, I know sometimes this can come upon people spontaneously and be quite scary.
Yeah. Was it scary for you?
No, not scary. No, it was very powerful and very profound. It just shifted everything in an instant, and that has continued to have its impact and continues to now. It was at the beginning of a process, I would say. That would be a better way to put it. The beginning of a process that still continues today. It wasn't scary, but it was the most profound experience I've ever had.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And can you find words to describe it, or is it just...
I will try. I feel like it's really the energetic aspect of spiritual awakening, of really starting to see clearly, seeing through the veil of identification that we have with our human identity, and to experience, not just to know that we're more than that spiritually, but to actually experience that and see from that different perspective. I feel like when we come into this world, we really get conditioned to see that we're this limited person with these kind of traits and with this, I don't know, all the ways that we identify with this job and this family and whatever it might be. But without any of those identifications, even identification with the body and gender and that sort of thing, it's like there's an essence to us that's beyond all of it, that doesn't die when we die.
Yeah.
And that was kind of revealed experientially in that moment. There was a lot of bliss, there was a lot of strong surging of energy, and at that, over the next few months, it was a bit to adjust to. It felt like this heightened state.
Is that related to the third eye?
I know that it does have an impact. The Kundalini kind of clearing energies have an impact on all of the energy, like chakras of the body and that sort of thing. In my experience, it was more that it would move in different areas at different times, and that very typical kind of depiction of it as starting at the base of the spine and then spiraling up. I've had that from time to time, but my personal kind of experience with that has been much more that the energy moves through the front of my body, a lot of pressure in the head, sometimes in the heart region. So it's quite variable, and it's just, it changes all the time. It just seems to have its own intelligence and do what it does. And as much as I can, I just try to give that space to do the clearing work that it's obviously doing, and align myself with it in terms of what I'm engaging in life, because it feels very much that it's asking a surrender to actually be of service in the world, in alignment with the source of our being, in alignment with God, consciousness, truth, whatever word you want to kind of give that source of effort.
And did you grow up with any faith, or like did you grow up around any spiritual teachings or like any religion?
I was brought up Catholic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I had that now, and that was just on my mother's side really. She was really very much involved in the church and would take us to church. I find that at the time, I'm really glad that I had that experience, because it gave an insight into that world, and I have an appreciation now of the teachings in the Christian church, in terms of the core of that teaching as the main kind of religions throughout the world. I think the heart of them all is beautiful. Like, it's just about love, kindness, non-judgment, care, being of service in the world, our connectedness to everyone and everything. And I think that there are lots of ways that through religion over centuries things can get a little bit off track. People's interpretation of it can become very judgmental, and this is the right way, this is the only way.
Yeah, that's true.
So I appreciate that I had that experience, but I sort of stopped going to that when I was a teenager. I found it boring.
Yeah, that's interesting. Did you kind of feel like, with growing up in the Catholic Church, did you kind of feel like a bit of like, when you started on your spiritual journey, a little bit of like clash with like, oh, but I was told this, and you know?
This has happened. Like, I see how there's such beauty in the teachings of all the religions that I'm aware of, like I say, but just people's interpretations of things. I just sort of felt like I saw it for what it was. It gives people a sense of community. So I think there are many ways to, so many unique paths. It just wasn't the right for me.
Just wondering, back to your dad, and was forgiveness a part of your healing journey?
I don't think it was like one moment where that happened. It was more like the more conscious I became of my own behaviours, where they hadn't been really healthy and where I'd just been acting out of being in some sort of survival mode. It brought understanding for why he was doing what he was doing as well.
Exactly. It's really hard, and then they just turn, like they shut down, and then they have like a fit of rage, and then or they just like drown in drinking or something. I feel like that was the old way. Well, that's how men used to be at. Just bottle it all up.
It's very encouraging to see that changing.
For sure.
Sort of things.
Sure. Did you find it hard to care for your dad when he was ill? Like, did you kind of feel like, oh, I have to do this, or like, well, this is what I feel, obviously it's the right thing to do?
No, it wasn't hard, because I feel at that point that I'd been away for a long time. Like, I wasn't living closely with him. I came back largely because he was unwell, And no, I just felt the...
Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah, there was also the other stuff going on, but that didn't change that. I just felt care for him.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. Could you please explain more about the concept of your opinion of universal energy or life energy used in Reiki, acupuncture, and I guess yoga in some sense?
Yeah, so I guess I can speak about my experience with Reiki, because that's what I do, like one of the things that I do in my work. My sense with that is that it's very much a healing energy from that ground of being, that source of life that can move through, like that can help with clearing energetic, emotional blockages, can help with relieving physical pain. In my experience of giving it and receiving it, is that it's gentle, loving energy. Sometimes it can have some very strong movement in terms of sensation, energy surges and that sort of thing. Yeah, just a very supportive, gentle therapy, but can have some profound effects. Yeah, and I also feel when I use it a lot alongside acupuncture, and I feel that those therapies work in different ways to really regulate and support the energy system in the body. With Reiki particularly, I find that it often is very helpful in allowing people to really let go and relax and really get out of the mind. And I feel the more that our bodies can relax into that natural state that most of the time I think most of us are not in, the more the body can heal. And I think also it gives an insight into this is our natural state. It's not natural to feel wound up all the time, to feel stressed out. I think our culture is just so out of balance in so many ways.
Yeah, and just our culture being out of balance, does that like affect our balance in our bodies? Obviously, silly question.
Totally. And often we're not even aware of it, because it's in that sort of family environment. We're in this culture, everyone's in it, we're all racing around trying to, complete the 20 things on our to-do list, and disconnected a little bit from presence, from connection within our body to start with, from time in nature, from quiet time, from silence and stillness, all the things that are really important for equilibrium.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of people find it awkward, hard to be still and then just be still and quiet?
I think so. And speaking from my own experience, it took a lot of kind of practice in a way to cultivate the ability to do that, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. I think that's actually a really key thing.
Not distracted.
Yeah. I mean, it's heightened now, like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
The devices
exactly.
And that sort of thing. The options for distraction are just like endless now. So it's even more important in a way to maintain some consciousness about where we're putting our energy and attention.
Does anyone have any questions or things, common questions or concerns that they might have when they come to you for an appointment or something?
Lots of people are scared of needles.
Yeah.
So that would be probably the main thing.
Yeah.
And people come for that acupuncture and Reiki for all sorts of reasons, from physical injury to really mental health issues to stress and all sorts of things. But yeah, I'd say probably just a little bit of apprehension around the needles. Very common. Outside of that, I think
they know what to expect, kind of.
And I feel too that I've been practicing acupuncture for about 16 years now, and in that time it's moved much more mainstream. So I think most people know about it, most people are aware it can help with this or that. So I think that kind of relieves people's kind of... Yeah.
And you seem like a really trustworthy person as well. Because not everyone would have the same experience with different, acupuncturists or, because they could have had bad experiences. You hear stories about massage therapists and things like that. It's just something that I feel awkward about going through, abuse and stuff.
People feel comfortable and at ease, and for a treatment, coming in for body work of any kind, it's vulnerable, and I think there needs to be recognition of that on the part of the practitioner, an effort made to connect with people and put them at ease.
Yeah. Did your Reiki practice improve after you experienced deeper levels of spirituality? Yeah. Did your energy, your life force energy become stronger, if that makes sense?
Makes sense. So I didn't start practicing Reiki until after about 1 or 2 years after that Kundalini awakening began its process. All of it really continues to impact on my energy and continues to clear out, what feels to me like old accumulated energies and emotions and that sort of thing. It keeps going. And the other thing that I would say me has been a noticeable impact of both the Kundalini awakening and practicing Reiki for a long time is that just gradually over time, sensitivity, like sensory sensitivity increases.
Is that awareness or?
Picking things up, sort of intuitive awareness, but also just sensory, like the feel of things, like picking up things in people's bodies, that sort of continues to increase.
So like you can sense if someone's been through something or like...
I don't ever want to assume that what I feel is accurate. I get sense of things, but I never want to make a judgment of, what I pick up is absolutely the case. It's more like this could be something, and then just check in with people if that feels appropriate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you mind explaining the source of the life energy that exists in every human? Like your opinion on it. Like what's the source?
It's a big question. So the source of life, again, this is something it cannot be put into words, but that awareness, that presence, that still presence that's constantly with us, accessible, the only constant actually in our lives, that vast space of awareness that we exist within. Everything in life exists within.
Yeah, like I really want to get to the nitty gritty, but
I very much feel it's an ongoing internal exploration and discovery. The more that we kind of can orient ourselves in stillness and introspection and presence, then the more that gets revealed. I don't think there's any end to that.
And how does Reiki and acupuncture balance like someone's life force energy? Does that make sense? Or balance their chi?
So they're coming at it from sort of different perspectives. Acupuncture is part of Chinese medicine. The understanding in Chinese medicine is that there are energy pathways, which have been given the name meridians in English, that run from each of the internal organ systems throughout the body, interconnected kind of network and web. When there are symptoms arising that show imbalance, whether they be physical, emotional, illness, anything that's kind of showing that the body's out of balance, then there's some disruption to the flow of energy through that network. So Chinese medicine and acupuncture are aiming to restore that and restore the balance within the body. Reiki is based on the understanding of the chakra system, which is the different kind of energy centers in the body, 7 primary ones, and then many outside of that as well. And that seeks to restore the balance and openness of each of those centers, and each center relates to kind of different aspect of our humanity in a way, our expression, relationships, sense of safety, right up to a sense of spiritual connection, openness, intuition. So there can be, from the Reiki perspective, there can be blockages anywhere throughout that system based on the kind of experiences that we've had, and it seeks to just gently help to open those up and help them to process. That said, though, I would say a caveat that I really talk with clients about around this as well is that these therapies help to prompt back rebalance or to help energies to move, but we have to be part of that as well. So we have to be, if it's some kind of condition where something that we're doing in our life is creating an imbalance, that has to be addressed. It's not just go for treatment and then you can just continue sleeping 3 hours a night or whatever. It's really about the whole holistic approach of look at what lifestyle changes could be made to support rebalance, as well as the treatment helping to restore that in the body as well. And with the Reiki, I'd say similar, that can help to relax the body really deeply and can help to loosen the blockages emotionally and energetically, but there is still a need for us to actually be willing to feel them, to really allow those energies to move and transmute through the body.
And can that be hard for people, like once they feel the energy?
Can be, I would say mostly in the actual treatment of Reiki, people, I can't remember someone coming out of that, maybe 1 or 2 over the 10 years or so or 9 years that I've been doing it, who felt a bit overwhelmed by it, but mostly people just feel deeply peaceful.
Yeah, and do you think that's partly to do with things coming to the surface in people?
Absolutely. And that can be really scary when it's, a lot of energy has gone to keeping it hidden, keeping it kind of below the conscious level. So it's really important that we are gentle with ourselves the way we would be with anyone else that was in any kind of struggle or suffering or in any emotional state. There's a need to bring love to ourselves in that same way that we easily give out,
And so Just one question. It's more than just like physically touching. It's like also like a deep inner kind of bringing to the surface things that are there. Is that correct?
It's different every time in terms of it's not like people experience exactly the same thing in each Reiki treatment, or that even for one person, one treatment to the next might stir up some quite different things. There's a similarity to it in that it always feels loving, it always feels like a good thing, but the way that actually shows up in terms of sensation in the body is different every time. Yeah, but it's a support treatment. I would say for these things, they're support treatments, and then there's also the part that we need to do for ourselves as well in terms of our own healing and spiritual evolution.
Have there been any, especially those from conservative backgrounds, like have they come to you and kind of questioned like whether they should be doing it, like with, you know, the spiritual elements to it? Have there been any like doubts in people's minds, like, oh, I'm not sure if I should do this?
Not that I can recall in that way. What I would say about that is that when people come to me, it's very much up to them what they feel comfortable with. So I'm not saying this is what is going to happen. I'm like, what do you? And from there, you know, it just kind of unfolds. And then for people that maybe don't feel so open to Reiki or the more spiritual aspect of the work, they can still come and have their leg, you know, and it's safe enough. So it's just wherever people are at and whatever any individual person wants on in the day.
Cool. And to do anything, you seem very like empathetic.
Very much against that. Used to do that.
Do you mind me going back to the Kundalini awakening?
Yeah, sure.
Did you practice Kundalini yoga, and do you think it was related, the awakening?
I didn't. I know that's a thing. I've never actually done it. I've done other forms of yoga. But at that time, I don't know if I was. It just kind of happened. But I was doing a lot of meditation. I was really deeply spiritually seeking for a number of years. So there's just infinite ways that can show up, I think, for people. I mentioned earlier, like it's the energetic aspect of spiritual awakening, of really starting to see through the veil of identification just with our human form and see more clearly things as they are. But there's more to it as well. It just feels like this never-ending process of discovery. But there's things with that Kundalini awakening that over the years of that energy always being there to some extent, background or foreground, it just feels like things have fallen away a little bit. Like my sensitivity to environments, like I couldn't be in a big crowd. Like it would feel so difficult to be in a really loud, overstimulating environment, or not to be spending times in kind of silence and meditation each day. Or there's part of it that feels it's a real call to align spiritually and to start to shed things that really don't serve. Another aspect to that as well is that just that desire to live from the truest place within myself in terms of my values, like to always be truthful, to always have care for people, for the environment, it just feels like it's not it would feel so out of step to not be really aligning with that all the time. There's still stuff like, you know, reactive patterns that can come up in me that I need to see and work through, emotions that come up in response to circumstances in my life that I need to work with and sit with, and it hasn't gone away. It's a lot less than it used to be, and things are seen a lot more quickly rather than going for days off on some kind of trail of, I don't know what, frustration about something. It just doesn't, it's kind of seen much more quickly, but they still arise, and I feel those imprints from childhood experiences it's still healing, really. Yeah. And potentially what I came in with as well. I don't process.
You're definitely more aware of things like that. Like after your awakening, you're more aware of these things.
Yes, because it became like energetically within me, something had cracked open, and there was no way that I could put the lid back on. Yeah. So anything that was stuffed down, it was like, no, that's not possible now. So I either got to sit with it or resist it, which is just going to get potentially really uncomfortable and difficult. And I didn't want to anyway. I just felt like, no, I'm here for this lifetime. I'm here to do this. I'm going to commit myself to it, and that's it.
Yeah. And you definitely feel like it was healing, like the awakening, rather than like, you know, opening a can of worms that you didn't want to open, kind of.
Probably both.
Oh, yeah.
No, I wouldn't say that I didn't want to open it. I'm probably a little bit surprised at how long that stuff continues. Like a lot of fear. I've had a lot of fear through my life, and I'm surprised at how much, like after 10 years of really daily practice with sitting with that and this energy moving through and clearing it, that it can still arise, that it's still working its way out. But I have no response to that other than it just is what it is, and I'll be with it. And like my life now, my experience of life now, it would be unrecognizable to myself 20 years ago. Like to know that it's possible to be in this state of peace, contentment, and not be searching for something that is increasingly present in my daily life is, I don't even know if that was in my realm of possibility when I was in my 20s. So things can change dramatically. Yeah.
So you were quite a different person 20 years ago. Is that what you're saying?
Fundamentally, at the source, no. But in terms of my awareness of what I was doing and my consciousness of the behaviours that I was engaging in and how I was living life, yeah. So it's like the deepest aspect, those more superficial layers.
Yeah.
Definitely. And evolve, and we can.
Yeah.
With no end. I think that's a very joyful thing.
Did you seek spiritual guidance from a spiritual guide, like after you had that awakening? Did you feel like, oh, where do I go? What do I do with this? Or like...
I've spoken about it with a handful of people, and mostly the people that I've spoken with about were close friends at the time who were having their own similar kind of spiritual experiences in some way, not the same, but of their own version. And then over the years, a couple of clients who've shared with me something similar that I've spoken with about it as well. I did go to my supervisor at the time, but I felt like unless someone's actually experienced this, they can't help me. It's not, and there's no reference point for it. So I kind of just stopped doing that, and well, I did it once, I didn't do it again. I just let it be an internal thing. It felt very like an intimate, sacred process that was going on, and I just needed to be with it and allow it to do what it was doing, not so much.
Because did you get anyone that said, oh, you didn't feel that, or you're just joking?
No, because I don't think I really shared it with
too much. Yeah.
Just didn't think there was any point really at that point.
What about your like parents?
So my dad he'd already passed away. My mother, I did share it, and she didn't really have a reference for it, but she was supportive. I don't think she knew what I was talking about.
And what are some misconceptions that people have about reiki and acupuncture? Common?
I don't know. I really don't know. I think there's such a range of people's understanding with those things. I think for the most part...
Or expectations, like do some people expect to come out like all better, or and they're like disappointed, or do they like... Do you know what I mean, kind of?
Yeah, I would say for the most part, people are aware that these sorts of treatments can help, but they're not necessarily going to just be a magic pill. It's going to, fix everything instantly. If people are expecting, it's just so variable, because I think with acupuncture particularly, that's so commonly used for injury recovery and pain, and it really can make a big difference in one treatment. But if someone's coming in and they've been suffering mental health issues for a long time or something like that, it's just a different expectation that people need at that point. It's very understandable that when people are really suffering, they're looking for something that's just going to take that away. Maybe that can happen, but my experience has definitely been more like it's gentle support for the healing process to take place within that person. Mostly people come in with a pretty accurate idea of what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And I certainly never want to give someone a false impression that, oh yes, come for a treatment and and I could never guarantee that. Even for something that I see people for regularly, like lower back pain, it's like mostly it helps, but I can't say for sure. I'd like to just send words of encouragement to anyone who might be struggling with their mental health and experiences of trauma, and say that there is a way through. Even when things can look or feel bleak and unchanging, there is a way through. Just really keep listening to that deep part of yourself that's guiding you all the time. Really doesn't guide us wrong. Challenges continue. It's not like they go away. It's just part of our life here. But I wouldn't change it. Okay, I don't speak that for other people. It all makes sense to me now.
Part of the process. It was nice to have you on, Tracey. Thank you for coming.
Really nice to be here with you.
Thank you for listening to Voices Unhindered. It's great hearing from my listeners. Reach out with questions and comments through Insta or Facebook. Just search for Voices Unhindered. I'm interested to know what other topics and voices you'd like me to bring on the show. Subscribe to Voices Unhindered on Spotify or Apple Podcasts to never miss an episode.